Yeah, I also heard that the DMT provides the television, but kapi is the spirit of the ayahuasca. And maybe that without chakruna we wouldn't have the visual aspect, but it wouldn't mean that the healing would not happen.
Exactly. Everyone is different. So we do this calibration protocol, we call it, the dosing calibration protocol for dosing. So the first week, this fourth week of microdosing, the first week, we the participants try 5% of a full dose, 10%, 15%, 20% in ayahuasca. Some people might think that microdosing is all beautiful things, but it takes you to uncomfortable places. And how do you navigate it if you are not prepared? One of the elements we have documented that has an impact on a microdosing process is having a connection with the plant, with a sacred plant, fostering or a plant spirit.
Tripcast vzniká díky podpoře Curacura. V tomto podcastu nijak nevyzdvihujeme psychotropní účinky jakýchkoliv psychoaktivních látek a nikoho nenabádáme k jejich užívání.
Hello everyone, my name is Eva Cezarova and it is my great pleasure to welcome you at our next episode of CZEPS Tripcast. Today with a very special guest from Peru, Álvaro Zarate, who is a leader in plant medicine innovation and co-founder of Microhuasca, which is a project focusing on microdosing ayahuasca and other sacred plants. Welcome.
Thank you, Eva. Well, I'm very grateful to be here to talk about things we've learned in Peru, in Latin America. There are very interesting opportunities and things that we have learned through these 5, 6, 7 years we have been working on this. And thank you for inviting me.
Thanks. So let's start with your personal story. How did you step into the plant medicine world?
Okay, so I come from, I was educated as an engineer. I was very much into mathematics and, this kind of things, and also management. So I come from, let's say, a different path. I have been working for like 10, 11 years in startup innovation, university incubators for startups, this kind of thing. So I have seen a lot of projects from a lot of sectors, right? But, and this is another part of the story, once a dear friend of me talked to me about ayahuasca, about her experience with his ceremonies, and told me, hey, whenever you want to go, I have a friend who does ceremonies in a very respectful manner. I will drive you even. So I said, okay, let's go. It was very innocent of me. I have already done, other entheogens like mushrooms or others, but not in this ceremonial context, right? So I went and I did, the ceremony with a healer or a shaman or a curandero. And to date, this was the most intense experience, or ayahuasca experience I have ever had. It was full of love. I felt love for everything and everyone, like the trees, the inanimate objects, everything, my ancestors, my future heritage, everything. And also I felt this thing about being connected with everything and everyone. Like this thing that a lot of people who do psychedelics say, like, we are all one. We are all the same consciousness, the same being. And I have never felt something like that. And of course, I was educated as a very rigorous and rational person. Like, okay, if this is not explained by science, okay, you should discard it or be very skeptical. Yeah, but now I felt it. I felt the sacredness. I felt God, like God in a sense of way of not like the anthropomorphic figure that tells you what to do, but the sacredness that is inside of all of us. That we are all the universe or something in that line. So it was very powerful for me. And it stayed with me and it helped me through some personal things. I didn't know much about integration at that time. It was like, I think between 10 or 15 years ago. And so I stayed with the idea. I stayed working with the universities and stuff. But then I got to learn more about microdosing. and how microdosing was helping people in other places of the world. And I got into contact with many traditional healers, the Shipibo healers. Shipibo are the indigenous nation most known for their ayahuasca use. Some say 3,000 or 4,000 years ago in the Amazon jungle they were using it. So before stepping into anything, I was for one entire year talking to a lot of people who have experience, traditional healers, scientists, psychologists, in the line of transpersonal psychology, this kind of spirituality things. And I started to learn, okay, there's an interesting opportunity for the ceremonial or the respectful way to use ayahuasca that is usually in the jungle, but in the cities. And this came one day after the COVID quarantine. So the indigenous healers didn't have any income because tourists couldn't go there. So they needed some help. So we started actually virtually talking. When I say we, I mean I started to be in contact with some people from my past or new people to join our team. We are 5 co-founders. So we started to talk with the president of the Shipibo Healers Association, who was in contact with most of them, in Peru at least. And started thinking, okay, what do you think about this microdosing thing? Is this a correct way to do it? How do you feel about this going to the cities? And what they told us was microdosing is nothing new. I mean, we have been doing this for thousands of years. They just didn't call it microdosing. But they have been doing it with pregnant women, with children, with pets even. So there was a tradition of microdosing. But of course, they have their ways of doing that, right? With respect, not like a big ceremony like we are used to. But there are some things that we have learned, and in this way, I will make a long story short. We can go into depth later. We gathered a team. We are 5 co-founders. We are 2 engineers actually. One transpersonal psychologist, one transpersonal coach, and one traditional ayahuasca healer. He calls himself an ayahuasquero, ayahuascologist, because he studies a lot of the experiments with ayahuasca preparations. He prepares ayahuasca. He does ceremonies with tobacco also. So we got a very diverse team. Our co-founders, now we are over 40 people from across Latin America. But it was a very profound experience for me. I'm still learning. Of course, I've made a lot of effort to make people join us, but people who are smarter than me or more are very conscious, very ethical, very responsible. We are a non-profit organization, a non-profit company. So we sell services. This is the way we finance ourselves. But we are not for profiting a board or something. We just, whatever we get, we reinvest it, or we make a better team, or make better conditions for our team. So that's what we are doing in Microhuasca or Microhuasca.
And so what exactly are you offering?
Mm-hmm. So this organization, we called it Microhuasca. Very easy, right? Microdosing ayahuasca. We started with ayahuasca, then we used other sacred plants. I will go there later. But we do 2 main things. One is the therapeutic program, we call it. It's an 8-week program for people who want to microdose ayahuasca or mushrooms or other plants, but within a therapeutic context. So, and it's virtual. This started in quarantine. So we have certified facilitators that accompany them for 8 weeks, from a preparation phase to a microdosing phase for 4 weeks, and then to let's say an integration or post-intake phase also with them. They rest, they stop microdose, but they still getting insights and learning. So the therapists, the facilitators, as we call them, they help them to go through the challenges they can face, because microdosing is not just flowers and loves. It can take you to very dark places or very places you have never seen. So it's a good idea, if of course, if you have like serious mental conditions, let's call it like that, to have a therapist. We also have a medical team. We screen before they do it, so we are very rigorous. If they are medicating themselves, we tell them, okay, stop medicating or do this. You can not do this. So we are very careful. We just don't accept everyone. That's the therapeutic program. But I think our main thing that we do is we call it our certification program for microdosing therapists or facilitators. So, we have done this program like 30 times or 30. We were going to start a 31st time. We accept cohorts of therapists, people with mostly therapeutic background, like psychologists, doctors, holistic therapists, in this line, right? Psychiatrists.
Is some kind of license a criterion to join or not?
At first, we thought about that, but then we tried. Okay, there were some people, for example, who had like were transpersonal coaches. So there's sometimes a beef between coaches and psychologists. But okay, that we get to know every one of them. We interview them, we talk to them, we ask them what are their personal story with psychedelics, if they have one, or why do they want to do this. So we get to learn. In one side, where their heart is at, but on the other side, how prepared they might be. And when I say prepared, I mean not only the academic credentials, but maybe experience. There are some people who do coaching, for example, who they haven't studied like psychology, but they're good and they can demonstrate that they are good helping people in some way. So we filter, but we are open. We have received people even some people who didn't have a therapeutic credentials, but when we tested afterwards, the results were even better than people with years or very renowned psychologists. So we try to be open, but of course careful, because we part of their training is to facilitate real microdosers. So we are very careful with that. So yeah, that's our other thing. The certification program is like 14 months. It was less, it was 10, then expanded to 12, so 14. We're always making it better. And we have already, between graduated students and current students, I think we have about 120 or 150 people, mostly Latin Americans, some from Europe, but we only do this in Spanish for now. If anyone wants to help or do something in English, we are very open to alliances, collaborations. But for now, we are doing it in in Spanish. And we are very careful about something I learned when I worked as a university professor and as a school director of one of the entrepreneurship schools. And one thing that I questioned a lot about the academic system is that many times academia or the entities or institutions that give you the credentials validate that you know something, but not necessarily validate that you know how to apply that something into the world. Because it's hard. It might take too much work. It might be too expensive, I guess. So it's like how, and I later found out that it was not only a Peruvian thing, but in many places in the world, psychologists can graduate and never had therapy in their life, or never gave some. So it was mind-blowing for me. Why do we they can be good professionals, of course, but sometimes you just roll the dice, and sometimes you can assume, okay, every psychologist or every medical professional is good, but I mean, if any of you have had a dear beloved person that had a lot of medical trouble and issues, they have to go to a lot of doctors, some misdiagnose them. It's like the results don't depend on what you have, but what medic do you have? You choose. It's crazy.
They also say that to find a good therapist is like to find a partner.
Yes, because it's hard. It's not an easy thing. And there are very smart people, but you don't only need smart, you need compassionate, you need empathetic. So it's like a mix of things. So
it sounds like you are going into the self-experience. Like how much is self-experience part of the 14-month training?
Yeah, it's very important for us. the person, each facilitator, in order to graduate, they have to experience at least 3 personal processes, three 8-week therapeutic processes with at least 2 sacred plants. It's usually ayahuasca and mushrooms. Some do San Pedro, but mostly it's ayahuasca and mushrooms. But they have to do that. They have to experience themselves, and they do it with a partner, with another student from a higher, let's say, a higher model, more advanced. So they record themselves. We have a supervisor team that watches the recordings and takes notes and gives them feedback. So they see, and then we have the students in the later modules be the supervisors and see how the others do it. So we're very adamant and see. Okay, now if you are a third person, you see what kind of mistakes, let's call it, or things that they can do better, how empathetic you are. You shouldn't give opinions. You shouldn't tell people what to do, to interpret things for them, ask questions. You should ask questions. So there are many things that my partners can explain better than I do. But we're very, very, let's say, adamant on that. And this is important for them to have a personal experience, and also, in order to graduate, they have to facilitate to be therapists for at least 10 people. Some of them are what we call the partners, other students, when they record themselves. But others are the participants from our other therapeutic programs. So are real people who we have access to. We can know if they are doing better or not. So, of course, in supervision groups, some people can tell, "Hey, I have a client," and they can lie. But in our case, we have direct contact with the participants, and we know it's important for us not only that they apply what they know, but they are actually helping the other person to get better, to have any kind of result, to have an impact in some way. So that way, I'm very I'm relieved that we can say, and I don't say this word very loosely, we can guarantee that people who graduate actually know how to have an impact in the people they help. And if they don't, they repeat the module until they do.
Nowadays, we can see in the global population, global psychedelic population, that there is quite a big interest in microdosing. And as I understood, you have a quite developed protocols of how to approach microdosing. And I want to ask, is there a big difference between microdosing plants and microdosing maybe LSD?
Mm-hmm.
And also, what do you see as the value of the protocols that you developed that can maybe bring more benefits to people who undergo this way?
Mm-hmm. So first, when I learned about microdosing, I learned in this way when you see these news articles that, wow, the Silicon Valley tech people are using and microdosing mushrooms to be more productive, more active. So I said, oh, it's interesting. But then I saw that this was in a way the way that microdosing was popularized in the world, like the vitamin, like the productivity hack, And I said, okay, I will research it more. And when I started to talk, with the scientists, as therapists, the indigenous healers, I learned, okay, that could be a way. I try not to judge, but in a therapeutic context, if you want to achieve lasting change, if you want to overcome an addiction or trauma or something like that, there should be a set of protocols or things flexible enough for you to actually achieve that, and don't need it. Like, if I don't microdose this week, I will feel bad. No, actually, one of our success metrics is when people stop needing us or needing microdosing. If you stop needing microdosing, maybe you can do it once in a while, but that's a way we can say, okay, you have in a way integrated, and you don't have the need to microdose. So that's one of important, let's say, pillar of our approach, the therapeutic context. But of course, I learned after some mistakes not to judge, of course, if people want to microdose for other reasons, or recreationally. Okay, it's all right. Recreational can be therapeutic, some say. But in this context, it's very important for us that the microdoser has somebody who can guide them. Mostly, because I mean, maybe if that person has a lot of experience or even credentials in therapy, okay, maybe they can help themselves. But usually we have seen with our data that having a facilitator or a psychiatrist or whatever, somebody who can listen to them and help them go through the learnings, it's better results. Community has been very important for most of our participants. They once a week virtually they join, let's say, a community circle and start talking about what happened to them in the week, what they feel. Oh, I felt the same. Oh, so they don't feel alone. They feel like they are, even if they have different intentions, there's community is a strong thing for them.
How many participants are in one of the modules?
Yeah, these therapeutic groups, let's say this community, maximum we try for it not to be over 10 people. So they have space to share, to listen. If it's too crowded, may not have the same effect. We have tried many variations. Yes, well, that's one thing, like facilitator is one element, community is another element. Then there comes like some elements we brought from the traditional way of using ayahuasca in ceremonies, let's say, or macrodosing. For example, when you do an ayahuasca ceremony, usually if you have a responsible shaman, they will tell you, okay, before coming here, you have to do something called a dieta. And the dieta is, let's say, some sort of detox from some, let's say, nutritional elements or medical elements that you should stop taking for a while, and also energetic. I will go into that. So, for example, they tell you don't, for a ceremony, they tell you don't eat red meats, don't eat pork, salt, processed foods, coffee, stimulants, other drugs, many like pills or medication, especially the antidepressants, kind of things. They have very strong interactions with ayahuasca. You shouldn't do that. So a responsible healer, let's say, they will give you a list of things that you should stop doing even weeks before going to a ceremony. This is, they say, nutritional or supplementary thing. But there's also an energetic dieta to take care of your energy. For example, some tell you don't have sex some weeks before. Don't try to stay away as much as you can of electronics. Some even shamans don't allow women in their cycles to go to the ceremony because it can be a very energetic clash. I don't know enough to go in depth of that, but that's important things that you will see in most, let's say, respectable retreats of ayahuasca. But when we go into microdosing, so one of our co-founders, he's a traditional ayahuasquero. He's called Ronald Rivera. Ronald Rivera, you can look him up in YouTube. He has very interesting content. And Icarus, he sings a lot. He writes his own compositions, the ceremonial chants. And he has, like, I think now over 30 years of experience doing this. So we created with him this dieta protocol for microdosing, because it's the same principles that apply, of course. They are not as strict because there's a difference. In macrodosing, in ceremonies, you prepare, 2 weeks before, you have your ceremony, and then you do like 2 weeks after or something, depends. But it's a small, let's say, window. But in microdosing, you're microdosing all the time. Like, not every day, but you are, like, in our case, we have 4 weeks of microdosing. There's 2 weeks before of preparation, 2 weeks after. So how do you, and you are living your life. You are having birthdays or reunions or whatever. So how do you overcome this? So we adapted like a dieta protocol, nutritional and energetic, adapted to everyday life. Because microdosing, you take it in your everyday life. You go to work, you even drive. You cannot separate yourself or isolate yourself from the world. You're working, you're doing your life. So there are things you cannot escape. Let's say you cannot avoid, but you can try to navigate them. For example, and dieta is, as for now, one of the most challenging parts for most of our participants, because of course, many people like to drink one cup of coffee every day, 2, 3, 5 cups of coffee. Okay, now we tell them you shouldn't. It's not like one day after you stop taking it, but you can stop progressively. Or for example, okay, 2 weeks into your microdosing process is your mother's birthday, you can drink a little sip or a cup of wine or whatever, but try it not to be in your microdosing day. So the therapist, the facilitator, at that point knows the participant in such a way that they can be flexible and recommend some exceptions. We don't like to be rigid. I don't think this works. Everyone is different, so we do this. I will talk about another protocol. We do this calibration protocol. We call it the dosing calibration protocol for dosing. So the first week, this 4th week of microdosing, the first week we the participants try 5% of a full dose, 10%, 15%, 20%. In ayahuasca, in mushrooms, the percentages are different, but they get to try everyone, so they can at least have the feeling. How do you feel with this, with that? And then from week 2 to 4 or whatever, they start. They choose which in the dosing days which percentage they want to take. So, for example, some of them, when they are not working on a weekend, they take that 20%. It depends on how's their week, what they want to face, the challenges they had, because maybe in one day they got some very strong insights, and then I say, okay, this day I don't want to microdose, or I feel it's too much, and the facilitator helps me, okay, don't take it, don't do this. So it's a very flexible process. We try not to be very rigid because, as you know, as people who have microdose or macrodose, this invites you to let go, to go with the flow. I mean, intelligently, of course, but it's not like a strict thing.
It's a step by step, and that's probably needed so one can surrender to it, and also like going slowly to the discomfort.
Yes, which is, and it's good that you talk about this word, discomfort, because some people might think that microdosing is all beautiful things, but it takes you to uncomfortable places. And how do you navigate it if you are not prepared? We have seen cases, it's sad, but it's kind of common that people relieve trauma from their childhood, their adolescence or teenage years, even sexual trauma. We have many cases of that. And they have forgotten completely about, our mind has this defense mechanism. We forget these bad things in order to survive, but they are there. And they make us be who we are now. If some person is violent, may have been a victim of violence that they forgot. So, and they relive these kind of things, sometimes in not a very pleasant way. So it's good that you have somebody to talk to, somebody that helps you, asking you the right questions so you can arrive to the answer by yourself. And not only arrive to the insights and the learnings, but also, now I know this, but you should take action now. If you want change, you should work on this. It's not like the pharmaceutical way. Like, you take a pill, it works by itself, you don't do anything. No, you should work on yourself. And that's the hard part, because a lot of people, when they hear about microdosing, they say, I will have this, I will supplement it with this and do this protocol, I will stack this with this. So it's very easy for us to make the external thing have all the responsibility for healing, because that's what we have learned from years of medical history. But this is an ancient or way of doing it is, work on yourself, put something of your part to work and be better.
If we look at ayahuasca and other sacred plants, how they are used in the indigenous context, it's usually in the ceremonial setting and with a ritual involved. So is this microdosing formula that you're offering? Does that involve ritual as well?
Yes. We learned that and we applied it from kind of the very start, one of our co-founders, she's called Anna, she teaches the ritualization, let's say, method or protocol, whatever you want to call it, for microdosing. So it's not like, okay, you take one drop with your breakfast and go to work. No, give it some minutes. They have a workshop about creating altars. So create an altar. I mean, it's nothing too fancy. Special things from you, if you have like a crystal or whatever fancies you. And have an intention and be intentional about your intake. So you take it. When I did it, for example, I took my time to be grateful to the plant, to my surroundings, to myself, to be intentional. Okay, this is what I want to work with. Even though maybe the plant later takes you through other paths, I am intentional. So for people who don't do that, it might sound like it's accessory. It's just a chemical compound, and I have it, and it has an effect. But of course, if you want to be too scientific about it, okay, maybe it helps you to rationalize that or interiorize, I think, that within you. Be more intentional, and it helps you psychologically even. For others, it's more energetic, more spiritual. So one of the elements we have documented that has an impact on a microdosing process is having a connection with the plant, with a sacred plant, fostering or a plant spirit. So we like to. I mean, people are free to choose, right? But we tell everyone, okay, there's a spirit in the plant. Ayahuasca is like a grandmother spirit. The mushrooms, or San Pedro, for example, is a grandfather spirit. So, and they have different energies. They might, at the end of the day, expand your states of consciousness. They might help you in a similar way, let's say. But how do you connect spiritually with that? It's not just a substance, but it's a spirit.
So how do you do that? How do you connect with the spirit of a plant?
Yeah, that sounds like a fancy thing, right? It's just like, okay, just be grateful. If you are taking ayahuasca, thank the grandmother ayahuasca. When you taste it, say, for example, at the beginning, we started with capsules, ayahuasca capsules. But later we stopped doing that and start doing with drops, which is the classical way actually to do it, to feel more the connection with the thing, the organoleptic feeling. So, okay, you are now feeling this was in the earth some time ago, in the Amazon, connect with that, like conscious eating, some people do, with conscious taking, conscious microdosing, let's say.
So would I understand it right that it is about creating the relationship to the plant, and it's also a lot on us. How do we approach it? If we approach it as a living being, or if we approach it as just a thing that I'm gonna use?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and you have the right to approach it the way you want. Everyone is free. I mean, of course, we also say that we don't try to judge, but we recommend what we have seen by patterns and data. We have a lot of data that this usually works better.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of data, when you touch that, have you been collecting?
Okay, so we have every of our participants do some journaling. We give them a journal that we created. So they actually every day they tell us when if they want to, right? It's not like a rigid thing. They report. It's for themselves first, for their facilitator second, and for research third. How did they feel in 14, let's say, states, like in mood, in agreeableness, in focus, in concentration, whatever. So, and they put a value from 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, I think. So that's data we have for every day on microdosing days, on rest days. Every week they do like a summary of what insights they learn, how they feel with their rest, their sexuality. I mean, they have the fields, they can fill them in if they want. If they not, they leave them blank. And also the facilitators, since they are students, like advanced students, they also do reports on their users. So we have two sets of data for the same user or participant, where the facilitator goes more into depth on how was their process, what were the challenges. So we have good set of data. And now with AI, it's easier to find patterns, and so we are on that now. We have gathered a lot. We have a lot of raw data, but we are like building the team to analyze it.
Uh-huh. But what could you actually share now for what is the observation showing? What are some interesting cases of people, maybe if they healed some kind of psychological or somatic illness?
Yeah, I was working on this this week. There's some patterns here. It's very new data. So by phases, right? In their initial phases, the first week, first 2 weeks, there's usually emotional imbalance, resistances. One very interesting pattern we have seen from day one until now, people who are more like workaholics or people who are very, say, strict to themselves, what ayahuasca does the first week is they send them to sleep. They want to work. I wanted to be more productive, but it sent them into sleep. Okay, maybe the plant is trying to tell you that if you don't take care of your physical body, you don't take care of your energy, you will not be productive. You're doing damage to yourself, and that's very unsettling for some at the first. But what we suggest, okay, if you can have a nap, or be more careful with yourself. So that usually happens. It's very, very, very common. Some participants mention anxiety, fatigue, disconnection. So this first phase is not as many of the cases, it's not as beautiful as you might think from the start, right? So, and some of them experience difficulty on trusting the process of letting go. In this world, a lot of us, even it is also my story, it's too much control. We want to control everything, want everything to go right, to be perfect. Okay, letting go is hard for some. So this is some challenges they face during the initial phase. Then during a middle phase, let's say, they experience moments of crisis and release. They feel like confusion, confronting old patterns, remembering some things. So they start like, if they let go, if they finish the phase of letting go, they start facing some of these things. We call it that microdosing as sacred medicines can give you benefits and challenges. So benefits is, okay, I'm in a good mood. I am more contemplative. The world is beautiful. Yes, that happens a lot. But also, we think that with the challenges, you might learn more because it makes you confront stuff. So in these initial middle phases, they start like confronting some things. They sometimes this is expressed through the body, crying out of nothing, energy shifts. Somebody is very passive, now he's very active, or the other way around. Or somebody is very agreeable, very good with everything, but now he feels more like confrontational. So maybe the plant is trying to tell you something about your patterns, right?
A lot of processes.
Yes, a lot of processes, a lot of challenges. And at the end, in the closing phase of the last weeks of microdosing, if they did a very conscious process, most of them enter into a stage we call integration and empowerment. So the people there report the clarity, the calmness, setting better boundaries to take care of themselves first, relationships with others improve. At the first times, some of them say, I don't feel anything. Because some people expect to feel like a physical tingling or thing, like they felt in ceremonies or whatever. But people that surround them, when they ask them, they say, no, but I do feel something different about you. So it's subtle. Microdosing is subtle by definition. But at the end, they are, okay, now I know. It's sure it's not a placebo, it's not a whatever. Or it might be, who knows. But I feel that this helped me. I had a process that made me improve something. And of course, in 8 weeks, you will not solve your life and all your things. But it's a very good first step. And we actually, there's a sense of continuity beyond the program. So we sometimes do this, how do you call it, follow-ups, and see, okay, was this a one-time thing, or was it like getting more permanent or lasting changes. Of course, if they continue working on themselves, they continue like having like meditating once in a while, or having a therapist, or working or talking to community, they continue. You don't need to continue microdosing necessarily to continue getting better. No? There are people who say, okay, the program is over, I will take the next course or the next whatever. Sometimes it's not lasting, but it depends on the person.
Or I come back to my life that I've been living until now, and that's also not easy to have the changes lasting if we come back to what we have been living. So we've been talking a lot about ayahuasca microdosing. You also mentioned that you use other plants. So if you could mention what plants. And with ayahuasca, I have a specific question because I understood that maybe it's not only ayahuasca as the brew, that is the combination of chacruna and Banisteropsis capi, but that it is also just the capi, just the vine. So can you say what kind of microdosing protocols with what plants are you using?
Mainly, 90% of the time, people are doing ayahuasca and mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms.
And ayahuasca is the brew or microdosing of the brew itself or of capi?
Okay, I will go into this. So ayahuasca is like the brew is a combination of two plants. No, the ayahuasca vine or capi vine and the chacruna leaves. These chacruna leaves contain this substance called DMT, which is the psychoactive and illegal compound in most of the world. You take the leaves by themselves, it will do nothing for you. But somehow our ancestors learned that if you combine both, it works, right? In the brew, in the ceremonial context, whatever. So in our first 2 years, we suggested people to microdose with a full thing. With DMT, capi and DMT. They source it themselves. We don't provide substances. It's not our thing. They find out, to a trusted source, and we did like an experiment with some group taking just a combination of both, and one group taking just the capi vine. And why just the capi vine? For starters, when we did this first year of talking with a lot of indigenous experts, when we asked them about microdosing, practically all of them told us, no, you just take the vine. The other thing will not work in these small doses. They don't use scientific words, but they talk about it. A couple of them says something like, the visions and the color and the symbols are on the leaves, but the healing comes from the vine. I cannot assess to the scientific proof of that, but 2 people said that.
Yeah, I also heard that the DMT provides the television, but capi is the spirit of the ayahuasca. And maybe that without chacruna we wouldn't have the visual aspect, but it wouldn't mean that the healing would not happen.
Exactly. And that, of course, some of us who didn't know about this was, wow, that's very interesting, because it worked the same. The result of the experiment was that it worked the same for people. So why, right? And we have a theory. We don't have like hard evidence or anything, but you know that every one of us has this thing called the pineal gland that produces their own DMT. We can produce DMT. We're illegal. We produce DMT, but in very strong moments of our life. Some say when we are born and when we die, when we go through the tunnel. So we are produce our DMT and we go through these intense consciousness expanding experiences.
That's a theory itself, no? Like it's not scientifically proved because you cannot really test it scientifically.
Yeah. I haven't gone too into depth of that, but of course that's what there's many people who talk about this. But our theory is that when you take just the vine, in some way it helps you produce your own endogenous DMT. So maybe I might be wrong, you are producing the DMT when you microdose only the vine.
So when people microdose only the vine, do they have visions?
That's an excellent question. yes, some of them do, and which sounds like microdosing should be subtle, right? So it should be like so it depends on the quantity, of course. Sometimes it's not always relational, but for example, if you take 5%, it might not be very intense for some. You take 20%, of course, you can be more prone to that. That's why we say, okay, beware if you in your calibration phase you took 20 and it was intense for you, don't go to work or don't have a presentation, don't do a podcast with 20%, right? So you can take 20% and have more, be more intense and maybe have some colors or things. But what we have seen is that you can ayahuasca only with the capivine can help you produce or be more symbolic in your dreams.
Yes.
So these visions happen in dreams. These symbols, these archetypes happen in dreams. These are very symbolic. So we actually, when we learned that it was so common, at least with ayahuasca, to our certification program, to our students, they have a special classes about dreams and Jungian methods and stuff.
Interpretation,
yeah. Of course, it's better if they specialize themselves. We have a specialized course just for microdosing and dreams, but it's very. It wasn't expected for us, but if the answer of a question is yes, you can have these strong things and symbols. That it's better if you have somebody to help you interpret them, unless you know by yourself, right?
Mm-hmm. Talking about ayahuasca, when we are talking about the brew that contains DMT, it is actually illegal in our country. So I would like to claim that we do not pursue or inspire, we do not want to inspire anyone to use any kind of illegal plants. But what is the legal frame in Peru?
Okay, so in Peru, there was like in 1971, there was a world convention between countries about their position on psychoactive substances. So every country like declared which substances are forbidden, whatever. In this convention, Peru said, hey, I want to make an exception for us. We want to make ayahuasca and San Pedro, which is a cactus from the Andes, which is also psychoactive, to be an exception from this. So in this case, you will not see like ayahuasca or San Pedro like Schedule I substances in Peru. So I still am not sure if we can say this makes them legal, because the definition of the word varies in contexts and in countries. But we are safe to say at least that it's illegal. So it's not regulated. There's no regulation on how to use it. But they say that the general tolerance that people have is, okay, if it's used in a traditional context, and of course, then we learn microdosing is traditional. So it depends on how you approach it. I mean, it's a very gray area, but there's a lot of this retreats, ayahuasca retreats in the jungle. A lot of people who want to go to retreats go to Peru to do these retreats, and they are not persecuted, it's not illegal, but of course they have to provide a safe environment and setting. This is on macrodosing is mostly, right? I think there's also for example with cannabis, we have you can have up to some amount of grams, and it's all right. I don't remember if for psychedelics, but I think they're kind of lenient in that side. But I really think that we as a country that is known for this kind of things, we should have more like public policy or people like doing what you guys are doing in Czech Republic, which I've read the wonderful article you wrote like a couple of weeks ago about how you guys are like setting examples for the rest of Europe. You have been talking about this for 10 years. So let's get the conversations going. Let's get people listening that this is not the drug. I mean, we have done that in Peru like many years ago with this convention thing. The Ministry of Culture said that ayahuasca is a national heritage. The Icaros, the songs are also national heritage. So culturally they are accepted, but of course there are conversations to be had in the medical aspects, in the drug aspects with police, and
Yeah, I really believe that public awareness is a very important particle of this whole puzzle of bringing psychedelics into the society in a respectful way. And talking about respectful way, you mentioned that one of the co-founders of Microhuasca is indigenous, and since it is work with plants, sacred plants of the indigenous people, actually, originally, how do you approach the topics of potential for exploitation of their tradition and also reciprocity? So how does Microhuasca approach this?
So, Ronald Rivera is a traditional healer. He lives in the jungle near Pucallpa, Peru. And of course, he prepares. He has his own garden when he grows his own ayahuasca. He prepares. When you say that a healer is also an ayahuasquero, it also means he cooks his own ayahuasca. So and the way they cook it is usually ceremonial as well. They sing to it. They put their energy into it. They blow tobacco. So it's not just let's combine chemicals. That might work, of course, but it's a more intentional, ceremonial way to do it. Setting that aside, about giving back. Ayahuasca, the vine, it can take up to 10 years for it to grow, for you to use it. So it's very prone to, I don't know the word in English, depredation. So if you can abuse of this in a let's say conservation point of view, and you can have it extinct, and then you have to wait a lot. And last year, this was not a lot in the news, but there was a lot of wildfires in the Amazon, in the Peruvian Amazon, and we learned that a lot of ayahuasca fields just got extinct, got burned. So that was a hard thing for indigenous people. Some of those were like being grown by them. Some of them were wild ayahuasca vines. And a good thing, parenthesis, about ayahuasca is you don't need to, how do you say, you need to chop trees in order to make it grow, because it's a vine. You can make it grow in trees, right? But of course, they were decimated by the fires. So then that was a waking up call for us, and to actually gather some of the psychedelic organizations in Latin America via an organization we also have helped to found. And we started to gather some donations to help people to repopulate the ayahuasca forest, but also to train people there about awareness on prevention of fires, on how to they approach these kind of things, because it's more common than we think. So this is one thing. And the other way also has to do with conservation. We are very for us it's very important that if you use this, if you're even microdosing, that is a small amount, what are you doing to help, even indirectly, for this not to be gone? So in some way we have a team or a department of social responsibility that we are gathering like funds to help. If we gather, or if we help or foster the use of this amount of ayahuasca, we are helping plant more ayahuasca, or helping efforts that are already ongoing. We don't have to do it from scratch, right? They're already ongoing to make this don't go away. And of course, as I said before, we don't provide the substance to our participants, but of course we can, let's say extraofficially, some of us or some of our communities suggest, let's say, good and responsible sources that are not like chopping ayahuasca, but maybe they are growing it themselves and regrowing it. So conservation is very important for us in this aspect. I don't know if it has to do with your question, but we also we have a social responsibility program with our students. So our certification program is 6 modules. And in the last module, they put into use everything that they have learned from the previous modules, and they create their own therapeutic program, like ours. We give them all the information. We hope they will do it later by like their own project. And they have to work as a team and create a program, a community program, but it has to be free, and it has to be for people who cannot afford this kind of treatments. So we have done this with dozens of users. So they also give us data, and so they are not like directly, let's say, taken care of by us, but we supervise that our students are doing a good job with them, and they are like being conscious to them. They have a filtering process in order to know if they are actually people who cannot afford this. So yeah.
Thanks. I also read about you that you are a part of the FIPE, Federation of... you need to help me.
Yeah, it's called Federación Iberoamericana de Psicodélicos y Enteógenos. So in a way, it's like a Iberoamerican Federation of Psychedelics. And when we say Iberoamerican, we mean like America as a whole, North, Central and South, and also Spain and Portugal. So it's like the Spanish and Portuguese speaking world.
So it's like an expanded Czech Psychedelic Society.
It's fun. Okay, because one of the ideas was to be only Latin America, but well, of course we have friends from Spain who are all doing excellent work. And yeah, we would just gather. We are organizations. It's a group of organizations that we start. Okay, let's do, because there was no psychedelic ecosystem in Latin America. And it was like wild for us because okay, a lot of countries are doing a lot of efforts and things, and we traditionally our ancestors have been working with this. We are not organized. We were doing like by ourselves great things. But now we joined together. We had like these sessions. We had like these monthly sessions where we all connect, be online. We share about how are we doing, how can we help each other. So trying to foster this community, and it's a very diverse thing. So it also has its challenges. What do I mean with this? Some of them are, for example, very medical. Let's say a psychedelic association of some country, they only accept doctors. Okay, they are on the right. But of course, we have others that are only working with indigenous traditions from Ecuador. Okay, there's their approach. So very different approach. Some of them do production. Some of them have startups. Some of them do only therapy. Some of them do all education also, or divulgation or science. So of course, it's kind of hard to make some talk with each other. It's natural, of course, but it's just for us to find a place to not feel alone sometimes, because when we are in this world, many of us have been censored by social media. Us in Microhuasca, they have canceled our Instagram account 6 times, which is our main source of marketing. So it's a censorship world. It's hard, and sometimes being an entrepreneur, doing it alone, in this space where there's a stigma, it can feel lonely, it can feel challenging, and many of our peers in different parts of Latin America said it. And when we are in these kind of spaces, when we treat ourselves with love, with understanding, it's a nice thing, a nice new thing to have. So this FIPE, this federation, has been 2-3 years old. We connect among each other. We don't have like an office or a big thing, but we are starting to create this regional ecosystem. And many countries have their own ecosystem: the Peruvian psychedelic ecosystem, the Ecuadorian psychedelic ecosystem, in Costa Rica, in Argentina, Uruguay is very advanced. So they have their own, but joining as a group as Latin America, which we share many things, among those the traditional aspects. We are very proud of that. So, and we, of course, we want to, it's very important for the indigenous voices also to be part of this, not just the doctors, the scientists, okay, because they are more advanced in our paradigm, right? Or they have more accessibility to these kind of things. No, but we need to hear all the voices, even if we don't agree with each other, which happens in every kind of organization. We don't agree, okay, but let's coexist. We are part of the same ecosystem, whether some like it or not. The big pharmaceutical, well, in Latin America it doesn't happen, right? But for example, in the global psychedelic ecosystem, the big pharmaceuticals, some of us might critique, but they are part of the ecosystem. They will be there whether we like it or not. So how can we coexist? So there's not an easy answer for this, but it's an example for me to say, okay, we are starting to create an ecosystem for us to try to help each other, to thrive, and to live by the guidelines that the plant medicine teaches. We are all one.
I think that's a very nice line for the end. Thank you very much, Álvaro Zarate. And so this is it for today. And I would like to thank to all of our listeners for being interested in this topic. And until the next time, bye.
Okay, personal story. I felt I started to touch my stomach but like a pregnant woman, so, a lot. So I felt in that moment like I felt being a mother, not a father. I felt being a mother, but at the same time I felt that all of my colleagues and students, we are all like spouses and spouses and siblings at the same time, stuff like that. But we were all gestating something, and I was like like doing the making it being born. How can I rationalize this and write this down later for me to tell my colleagues later? And another part of me said, Álvaro, shut up, stop thinking and just feel.